Hello everyone, and welcome back to another GIS lecture video. And in this GIS lecture video, I want to wrap up our discussion on GPS by talking about the concept of differential correction. Or put another way, given all of the errors that we've talked about and issues with viewing geometry and all these kinds of things, is there a way that we can do better? Is there a way that we can go back and fix the problems so that we have the highest quality possible solution for a location? And the answer to that is yes, there is. So let's go ahead and give ourselves a little bit of space here. We're going to talk about the concept of differential correction.
Hello.
Differential correction. And so the idea with differential correction is that we start to bring in that third component, right? The base station component, the three components of GPS, right? Satellite, user, and base. We bring back in that base station component, and we use that to communicate out corrections to the errors that we're seeing in the GPS. Okay? So what I want to do is I want you to imagine that you are on a 2D surface, right? And so you have a base station, which we're going to mark in blue, and the base station is sitting right here, okay? So I'm going to draw a sort of side-on perspective here, right? So the base station, is, let's draw that a little bit cleaner, right? So from the side view, right, we have the base station here. We have the satellite up in space, right? And it's communicating both to the user. We don't know where the user is yet. And it's communicating to the base station as well. Okay, so this is, just to be clear, this is a base station. Right. And so we know for a fact that the base station truly is here, right? It's been measured for years, potentially. And we have a very good idea of where it is, right? There's no question. It's not moving, right? Buildings don't tend to move much. So we know where it is. So it's communicating with the base station. The satellite and the base station are communicating. And let's say that you collect a point, and I'm going to do you in gray here, that you are communicating, and it says that you are here, right? That the communication says that you are, this is little you are there, right? The base station is receiving the exact same signal. The base station receives the signal, and the signal is telling the base station, hey, base station, we are telling you that you are here, right? So this is the true position of the base station. Right, and so to put that into the drawing over here, right, it's predicting that it's somewhere, right? That the GPS is saying, oh, base station, you're over here. And this could be due to any of the errors, right? This could be due to this, let's just say maybe there was a particularly bad atmospheric conditions that day. And so the base station gets a signal saying, hey, I'm over here. When in reality, right, we know, or the base station knows where it is. So what the base station can do is the base station can say, hey, you're wrong, satellite. I should really be here, right? I know how far off I am in distance, and I know how far off I am in direction, right? So the base station then knows the errors, distance, and direction, right? The base station then communicates to the user that information saying, hey, user, I just got some information that was wrong. I was 50 feet off in this direction. You should account for that. And so then what happens is the base station communicates to the user. The user then takes the signal from the satellite, calculates its position, and then goes back and changes and says, okay, well, I also need to then move, 50 feet in this direction to get the true location. right? So this would be the measured user location. Right, so this is the measured user location. It's communicating with the base station. So then it moves itself, right, to the true location. It uses the error that the base station was able to know because the base station knows its location. And so if it gets something that is way off, it can communicate, hey, I got an error that was, 15 feet north. It communicates that to the user, who gets that same signal from the satellite and says, if I want to be more accurate, I probably need to go 50 feet south to account for that error that this base station was getting. Okay? So that's how differential correction works in a nutshell. Right? You have the satellite communicating with the base station communicating with the user. The base station finds an error relative to what the satellite was saying. It communicates that error to the user. The user gets the information from the satellite, applies that correction to be able to be more accurate, because the base station knows exactly where it is. So hopefully that made sense. Okay? So what I wanted to do to end this video is I want to talk about errors that differential correction can fix and errors that differential correction cannot fix. Okay? And I want to think about this for a second. So the idea here at its core is that the base station is getting the exact same signal that the user is getting. That's how this is able to work. Base station gets the same signal, makes its corrections, communicates that to the user. The user then adapts and adjusts to be able to fit. So I'm adding in an atmosphere here again. So let's think. Well, if the satellite is predicting that it's in the wrong location, right, that's ephemeris errors, it's going to commit that same error both to the base station as well as the user. Therefore, the base station can correct for that. So we know that the base station can fix what are called ephemeris errors. Right, again, we know that the base station, using differential correction, can account for ephemeris errors because that's an error coming from the satellite to the base station, as well as from the satellite to the user. We're good there. What about clock errors? Well, same thing, right? If the satellite is producing an issue with the timing, right, it's going to communicate that same error to the base station and the user. So clock errors can be fixed. Okay. What about atmosphere? Well, this one's a little bit tricky. So atmosphere, right, we said that the atmosphere can absorb, reflect, or slow down the signal from the satellite. So what about the base station versus the user? Well, here we're making a bit of an assumption. We're assuming that if the base station is close enough to the user, that it will be experiencing the same atmospheric errors, right? So in a sense, yes, we are assuming that the base station can fix most atmospheric errors. Right? And I'm going to make a note here, right? Assume base station right is close to the user. Right. So for example, if you were using Long Island, right, you'd want to pick a base station that was located on Long Island. You would not want to pick a base station located in Michigan, for example, because then, right, you'd be breaking this assumption And the base station in Michigan could be having completely different environmental and atmospheric factors. But as long as the base station is close to the user, right, we make the assumption that it can fix most of the atmospheric errors. Okay, so that leaves us 2 errors left: receiver noise and multipath. And I want to take a second, I want you to think through whether or not this method of having the base station experience an error, communicating it to the user, if that makes sense to deal with the multipath and the receiver noise errors. Okay, so hopefully you've thought about it, and the answer to both of them is no, for much the same reason, right? With receiver noise errors, right, that is the error that is caused by the device itself emitting some radiation that is interfering with the signal, right? A base station is going to have a different setup and a different system that is not going to be emitting the same levels and the same amounts of radiation, right? So receiver noise is unique to that receiver, meaning that the base station can't do anything about that. So the base station or differential correction cannot account for receiver noise. Now what about multipath? Well, the same general concept applies, right? If you were to be standing, and I'm going to make this a nice pink concrete building here, right? If you were to be standing next to this building, getting multipath errors from this building does not exist by the base station, right? The base station, generally speaking, is put in an optimal location in terms of having access to the skyline. So the base station is going to have little, if any, multipath errors involved. It has no idea that you're standing next to this building. So by that logic, right, the base station cannot know what type of multipath errors you're getting. Therefore, the differential correction cannot account for them. Right, so differential correction cannot fix multipath errors. Okay? So, hopefully this makes sense. This idea that we have differential correction being able to communicate between the satellite and a base station to figure out the errors in the satellite, and then communicate those errors to the user to be able to account for them, but that it can't account for receiver noise and multipath errors because those are unique to each individual user and they're not generalized to the base station. So hopefully this makes sense. And as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. Thank you.